Firstly, on this week's episode, I want to apologise for how I look or sound. I've been really ill this week, mainly because of what you're about to watch. But I've just not been myself at all. So yes, I'm a big chap, but I've lost half a stone this week, mainly through not eating and being ill. So I'm really sorry if I seem a bit down, but if I seem a bit confused as well, it's because I'm struggling to remember things as well. But in this week's episode, we basically went through the flooring. Our plan really for the weekend was to put the new flooring down, so the new ply, and then the Alto flooring on top, and then hopefully to start building the furniture together, to start putting the furniture in a little bit, because basically we needed to get the bed fitted this week as well, so we needed to know where the returns were on certain parts of the furniture. And the width as well for where the wardrobes went up, to make sure there was enough width there that the bed would fit in properly. So it started off basically going through ripping up the old flooring. Saying ripping up, we did it nice and gently, just unscrewed everything. I'd already taken the lino off the floor beforehand, and in certain areas like the back corner of the sort of boot, and also the front behind the driver's door corner, we'd found mould on the back of the lino, and there's mould that started to grow really badly on the floor, and we didn't know why, because there was no leak there or anything else. So after a bit of ringing around with people and sort of checking on things, your campervan conversion is a sealed box, and if it's colder outside than you are inside, you're going to get condensation on the outside. Well, what happens if your flooring isn't bonded absolutely perfectly is that you get that between the layers of the floor as well. So as you can imagine, the floor underneath the van is colder than the top of the lino inside the van, and even just a couple of degrees can make the moisture turn into condensation. And if the lino isn't stuck perfectly flat to the ply and perfectly sealed, over time you'll get condensation building up. It can't really go anywhere through the ply, it certainly can't escape out of the lino, and then only when exposed does it turn into proper mould and stuff like that, which is what we found after a few days of having the lino up. There was mould all over the place in the end. Obviously, to combat that, just make sure everything's sealed and glued, and then you should be perfectly okay with that. But the way it was explained to us, it made sense. The more you can aerate your van, I guess, is the better, but other than putting sort of floor vents in and things like that, I don't see a way around that problem. Or maybe if you don't have lino as your floor topping, you have something that's breathable or something, maybe that'll get around it. So that was like the first thing that we found, was the mould and everything on the floor. But we took the floorboards up, the old ply boards, cleaned them all so that we could use them as templates to make sure that the new ply boarding was done properly. We put the new ply boarding down, and obviously then had to put the old ply on top of it, because I wanted to make sure I used the same screw holes. I didn't want to create more holes than the underside of the van. So I put the old ply on top of it and then sort of gently screwed smaller holes just through, or a smaller bit of the drill bit, so it just went into it a little bit, so I could use the same holes. It worked for probably about 50% of the holes, which wasn't too bad, but the other ply was made up in one big sheet and two smaller slivers at the side and back, whereas the new ply was made up of one that went sort of like more or less across the van as you walk in through the sliding door, and then you had two pieces which were the back of the van made out symmetrically, so the holes didn't kind of like line up where you would want to level off the pieces correctly. So I still had to drill a few more extra holes with that, and my advice on that was got again off what I'd seen online, but I've not seen any YouTube videos about it. And that was, obviously the floor's kind of corrugated like that, so you've got bits that stick up and then bits that are low. So your ply obviously sits on the corrugated bits. Once you know your depth of your ply and give a little bit for your insulation underneath, you then know how far you need to drill just to create a hole. Same for the screw depth. So I had 12mm ply. I then had the gap underneath for the insulation. So I then wanted to make sure that I drilled through maybe kind of like 14mm, and that would take me through the floor. So just make sure that from the chuck end of my drill that there was only 14 mils worth of actual drill bit protruding out, so I wouldn't go into anything that was sticking underneath the van. And then I used the same sort of depths on screws as well, so I went for 16mm screws just to make sure that they bit into it underneath, and that's fine. I've since checked underneath, and wherever I've drilled holes have all come out perfectly okay, and I've not drilled into anything I shouldn't have. I did a quick visual check obviously, but you can never be totally sure. So that was alright, and that worked out quite well. The one thing I would say is the ply that said it was cut to size for a T6 long wheelbase certainly wasn't. We've had to trim it. We've had to trim it around the boot. We've had to trim it around the step as you come in, because the ply was actually sticking out too much. So as the step comes in, it kind of slots in place with some clips. Those weren't being allowed in there, so I had to kind of like cut out a little bit of the ply at each one of those points where the step slid back in, but I got there eventually. And then the other sort of side of this weekend was just the weather, which is why I got ill. But not only was the ply flooring cut to size that wasn't, same again with the Alto flooring, the flooring covering, that was specifically supplied, cut to size for T6 long wheelbase. So one thing I'd probably say to people is don't spend the extra money on getting cut to size, because they don't care whether it's cut to size or not. So just get a sheet, cut it yourself. It was easier for us in the end to do that than it was try and make theirs trim to fit and stuff. It was easier to get the template out of the floor of the van, place it on top of theirs, trace round it, and then cut it. And then once you put it in, then in the van it was all fine. So the second part of what we were hoping to do the weekend was get some of the kitchen bits fitted, mainly because we're having a bed fitted, you see. So we wanted to make sure the bed was in the right place, for like the sliding table to be the right place, and when the bed's out as a full bed, the seat bed, rock and roll bed, when it's out as full as a bed, that it wouldn't come into contact with the bit of the kitchen that sticks out where the fridge is. And we're not having the fridge there, we're having a toilet in that cupboard because we're having a drop top fridge. But needless to say, that part of the kitchen does exist, and obviously what you don't want is it butting into each other like that. So what we basically went through then was like let's just get the kitchen part of the furniture kit built up and see how we get on with it. It wasn't probably very long we started seeing a few little things, mistakes from their instructions, things that didn't tally up, or like build a drawer kit. That was on one set of instructions, just said build drawer kit. Drawer kit consisted of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. Not too difficult, but they had no indication of which side to use for each of them. They had no indication of using like pre-drilled holes or anything like that. So it's just stuff like that I hate. I mean, IKEA is simple enough. This stuff was just bonkers. Someone just not bothered. Bits missing from it as well. So like the sliding table had no rail or arm or frame or anything. Where all the click buttons, the latches for the doors or drawers, wherever they fitted, some had metal brackets so that it latched against it. Some didn't, they were just missing. The table, so the worktop itself would have to be pre-cut for our SMEV hob and sink. That was not done properly. It was like, was it in 35-40mm short in the end, which led everything else underneath it to be wrong. So we gave up Saturday night after all that hassle of the snow and the floor being wrong and the mould and cleaning and high winds and blah blah blah. We gave up. So this is as far as we got this week. Since then, time's passed obviously. The kitchen stuff I'll explain next week. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I will give you a little spoiler. We've had a bed fitted this week, so I'm not going to say much more, but on the next episode you can see which bed we got, and hopefully you'll get to see more of the kitchen furniture as well. So once again, I am sorry about maybe looking a bit ill and feeling a bit down and a bit but yeah, I've spent 4 days of this week not being able to move because I've been that ill, and like I say, I've lost half a stone. So there's always a silver lining, as people say. Yeah, but until the next time, please do hit that thumbs up button if you liked it. And if you've got any comments or anything, then leave them down below and I'll reply to them. And hopefully you have fun with your camper van, and take care until the next time. Bye.